Okay. Welcome everyone to ProductTank Belfast. So hopefully we've got a lot of familiar faces on YouTube and some new faces as well. We're trying a couple of different formats, like middle of the day that we're doing here, and we're also aiming to have one event a month in 2026. So without further ado. So the mission of ProductTank is to foster collaboration, growth within local product management communities to drive innovation and excellence. And we in Belfast are no different. So we have a lot of organisers now. As you can see on screen, we've got Eilish, Stephen, myself, Emma, and Johnny. So if you have any questions about ProductTank Belfast at all, then please feel free to contact any one of the five of us. So, with any community is really it's a two-way thing. It's not a one-way broadcast. So we want to hear from different people or people who've spoken before to speak at future events. So if you have an idea or you want to sense check anything, please contact any of the five of us and we can help you. We would love to hear from as many people as possible. You can also sponsor ProductTank, and that could be in many formats. That could be just through hosting, but it also could be through hosting and providing some pizza and drinks as well. You can see the QR code there if you want to learn more. There's also Mind the Product training. ProductTank is a network as part of Mind the Product. It is founded in 2010. There's about ProductTank is in over 200 cities, and it's part of the Mind the Product free network. And they also provide training. And if you go online, you'll be able to see the courses available to you. There's also an excellent AI knowledge hub where they're posting new content every single day. So please do check that out, and it's all completely free. So I'm going to hand over to Andrea and Dave, and they're very kindly going to talk to us about their book, The Product Momentum Gap, and we are delighted to have them. So if you would like to hand over and you can do your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks Graham, thanks ProductTank for having Andrew and me. We're going to talk about the book. The book's called The Product Momentum Gap, so we're going to dive straight into some questions around the book, around what we do, and how topics in the book might help you. But first of all, quick introduction. Andrea, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Andrea. I'm currently head of product marketing at Turtle, obviously co-author of The Product Momentum Gap. My background is in product as well as product marketing. So I know what it is to be a product manager. I know how difficult it is. I have the experience, and I just had a lot of fun working on this book with Dave, and super excited to be here today.
Yeah, so very quickly, I'm founder of Confidence In. We do leadership training to help product managers become strategic, influential product leaders. And my background is leading product functions in all sorts of businesses, in all sorts of sectors and all sorts of sizes. So let's jump straight into it. So we have, we're going to shape today's presentation a little different to how we've done it in the past. Or instead of our normal approach, we've got a set of questions that we frequently get asked together. So what we're going to do is go through a set of those questions and discuss them between us, more like a fireside chat, and hopefully that'll be super useful for you and insightful. If you have things you want to ask, please just add it in the live chat, where we'll be keeping an eye out. Anything to add there, Andrea?
No, let's get started.
Over to you then.
So I will ask this question to Dave, which is, what is the product momentum gap and why does it matter?
So I think I've got a bit of help here to answer this question. So
we came prepared.
Yeah, we came prepared. the product momentum gap is that point where you're been growing, you feel like you've been getting strong product market fit, business is going well, you've been getting some good acquisition, some good sales, maybe some good retention, but it's for some reason that growth starts to slow down. It's the momentum starts to reduce, and we start to see a bit of a plateau. So we were doing wonderful, but for reasons that we can't always are not so sure about, and it's normally because of that strategic alignment being getting lost, or there being no measurable outcomes. And you'll recognize this because it feels like when you watch it feels like watching a field full of kids playing football where they all chase the ball wherever it goes. And whether that's sales telling you we're chasing the demand wherever it is, sales will be asking for be able to support features for a particular market or a particular subsector or a particular client. And you're all running and chasing after the momentum, after the ball, and in this case, the ball is demand and sales. Instead of being more strategic, keeping that formation and being really clear of what you are going after and what you're not going after. And that ends up with this gap where we get that plateau over time. And instead of it going up nicely, we start to see that plateau. And that's the gap in a financial sense. From a product sense, from a pure product management sense, the gap is really that we've lost strategic alignment and we've forgotten who our ICP is, and we've started trying to serve too many people too quickly. That's really what the gap is, where we stopped building features for the market to serve underserved needs, and instead we're building features for customers. Much more prevalent in B2B, probably, in my experience, but not exclusively. What did I miss, Andrea? I must have missed something.
The second part of the question was, why is it important?
Two reasons. One, we want to invest our product money, the money we spend as product managers, the millions of dollars we spend on building the features. We want to invest them on things that are going to give a return. We want to invest that time and money and the sweat and effort that everybody puts in the product development process, the engineers and designers. We want to make sure all that effort is going to make somebody's life better somewhere, improving their whatever it is they're doing, whatever change you're trying to make, and that we're supporting the business growth and pleasing shareholders. And we've got to get that. We've got to be in that sweet spot of both of those. And if we fall into the gap and don't get out of it, then we're not going to achieve that, and we're going to be wasting opportunity and potential. The other huge issue is there is a point of no return. When you go down that red line, there is a point where you can never close the gap again. And these are companies, I work with struggling startups that are scaling. And I work with a couple that have sort of hit that sort of 8 million or 5 million mark. Their goal was 10, and they just can't seem to get to the 10. And that's because they've hit that gap. They've hit that point where the new acquisition for business and new sales and is being eroded by the churn, and they just can't get out of it. And at some point, as they slowly grow, the only way to fix it would be to get rid of a load of business and stop serving a bunch of customers that are clearly too diverse and not something not have low PMF. But in order to do that, you have to accept a significant drop in revenue. And at some point, that is not appetizing to the board or to the investors. And that's where we see the point of no return, where that plateau is we can never overcome it without some really very significant risk or change in the business mindset. So put shortly, it's important because we don't want to end up in a business that gets stuck and fails to achieve its goals and then ends up pretty much being a fire sale and closing eventually long term. Anything you would add, Andrea?
I would just add that PMF is product market fit, just in case no one's familiar with the acronym. But yeah, that was a very good answer.
All right, my turn in the question seat. See how this is. So Andrea, how does the product value creation plan what we call the product VCP in the book. How does that help people close the gap?
Excellent question. So the product VCP is, sorry, did you have a slide to follow up with that?
I have this slide to help.
There you go. The background that I was going to give is the product VCP is essentially a set of templates that you can use, and you fill out those templates through a workshop. And what it helps to do is to make sure that you're aligned around some of those value assumptions around what you're doing, why you're doing it, who you're doing it for, all these wonderful questions that we always have. But above all, to make sure that that customer value is actually measurable. And that's the outcome of that whole thing, is to align, to get measurable customer value to around what customer value even means, because that is a question that we get a lot, is what does it mean? And the answer is, well, that's for you to decide as a team. What does value mean for your customers? What would you add to that, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the question, how does the product value creation plan help? I think there's two big things. It ensures that we have alignment across our senior stakeholders.
There's going to be a really important word here, alignment.
Alignment,
You see it a lot.
It's going to be, that's the buzzword of the day. It's going to create alignment over what value, what is the strategic value we create. Instead of it being a laggy metric such as revenue or reducing churn, the product doesn't necessarily create those things directly. What do we create directly is we change user behavior. When we release a feature, if it doesn't change our user behavior somewhere, unless it's like an insurance product of some description, or like cybersecurity where we don't want people to use it because that means there's an incident and something bad's happened. Typically, it means we want users to engage with the product and it changes their behavior in the real world somehow. If it doesn't, then we don't actually create any value inside that organization. And if we agree which user behaviors strategically we want our features to impact and influence, and then come up with some way of measuring them, then we're aligned what value means, instead of it being ambiguous and just defined by whoever shouts loudest or can articulate it best. And of course, salespeople articulate value best because it's their profession, along with marketeers. So I think how it helps is creates that alignment, and on a very practical sort of real world level, it really helps with prioritization. It helps with that governance, that prioritization and road mapping. And from a day-to-day perspective for a product manager, it helps them say no to things that are off strategy, and helps us purposefully make a decision against doing things that are tactical versus strategic.
Excellent. What I would add is actually the product VCP has huge impact beyond just alignment in the product team. As a product marketer, I will add the alignment actually has a domino effect all the way into marketing, commercial, go to market, all that stuff. So if you agree around what the customer value is, what user behaviors you're tracking, you can then actually take those user behaviors and that customer value and use that to create your messaging framework and your value framework and all of those things that then feed into the commercial teams. And that just means that the experience that you're creating from before the person even thought, hey, what is the product that I need? They're thinking about the problem that they have. That experience that you create from them going to ChatGPT now, or going to Google, searching for the problem, landing on your homepage, eventually maybe starting a trial. That experience is seamless because you've talked about the user behaviors and the value directly in your messaging and your positioning, and the experience that same thing or those things once they get to your products.
Love it. So we have congruence throughout our go-to-market, through our support, and through with our product investment decisions.
Exactly.
That sounds pretty good to me. Sounds
like the dream. Cool. So the next question is, why do so many product strategies fail to translate into real customer value?
I love this question. And it's difficult. It's a hard question. So first of all, let's just be really clear. You know, I spend on the fact the problem exists. I spend most of my time coaching either CPOs or founders. Normally they're sort of Series A or Series B businesses backed by VCs, and they regularly will express sentiment along the lines of, at the beginning of the year, we set out to do A. It's now the end of the year, and I'm not sure what we've done, but we didn't do A. And that's a common theme where it was really clear what the strategic investment was, why we thought that was a good thing to do. Very clear that it was valuable. And the board had agreed to fund it, spend money on it, and all those other good things. But the day-to-day, the firefighting, the day-to-day pressures, the pressure of trading, the pressure of getting that next deal in, the pressure of saying no to customers who are not ICP, which is a really hard thing to do for some companies. All of these pressures land every day and encourage us to think about the very short term, which is monthly revenue targets or quarterly revenue targets in a larger, more private equity backed business. And so if we're focused overly on the short term win, it's very easy to just forget all about the long term win. And when it's not clear that we're accidentally deprioritizing that long term, deprioritizing that strategic goal, without it, it's almost invisible. We just were almost running along doing BAU, forgetting what we were trying to achieve. Or we've convinced ourselves that this short-term trade-off that we're making is actually supporting the long-term goal, and articulated the decision in such a way that we can do what we want right now and somehow get the long-term benefit, which is rare in reality. But emotionally, we don't like the trade-off, so we come up with ways of articulating it so it feels better for us and everybody buys into it. That problem happens a lot. And so why does that happen? To illustrate this, we don't have clarity we actually understand how we're trying to create value. We think we have a strategy, but actually we don't. Normally the product strategy is, unfortunately, it's half baked. And by that, I mean, we've done the first set of those value assumptions in that Venn diagram. We're pretty good at recognizing, hey, if we solve this customer problem, we'll get this, they might pay us money. But we don't go to the next length to understand what the actual user behaviors are. So it's not really strategic product strategy. It's really just business strategy. So firstly, one of the issues is we don't have strategy. Secondly, one of the big issues is we haven't articulated it in a way that we can comfortably measure it and then use those targets to drive our prioritization and decision making. And those two things means we fail to create value and end up spending a lot of money. And in many cases, if we just hadn't spent the money, we'd have improved our P&L, our profit margin, based on doing nothing. Would have been better than spending the money. Too many of the decisions we make don't actually turn out into profit. What have I missed, Andrea? What would you add?
I would add the lack of alignment, lack of understanding, maybe lack of definition of what customer value means. I often see a lot of founders, and this happens a lot, and it's not wrong. I understand why it happens, but they fall in love with the solution as opposed to falling in love with the problem. And they're so tied to what they think their product should look like that they don't stop to think, and teams also, right? As a team, we don't stop to think, is our perception of the value that we're providing the same perception of the value that our customers have about what we're giving them, right? Is that perception the same? Is it aligned with what we're providing, how they see us? And that's why we need continuous market discovery, continuous user research, continuous everything, right? Keep asking that question of, is the perception the same? If it's the same, great. You're on your way to defining that customer value. But if it's not, then it doesn't matter what features you create, what solutions you're providing, the value is not there for the user.
I love that. just to almost expand that just a little bit, that obsession about the solution, it's so common, and too many product strategies, the strategy is build feature X, which is not strategic. That's the solution. We've got to get back to our solution. Our strategy is to solve this problem and change the user behavior so they overcome the issue and get the value the other side. And that forcing that conversation about what the actual user behavior is normally very enlightening and really expands the strategy so everyone understands it. But it's the same with the sales process. You know, if nobody wants to buy the solution, I don't want to buy this. I don't really worried how this problem's solved. What I want is this problem to be solved.
It's a very, very specific distinction.
Exactly. And if the strategy doesn't consider that and is overly dictatorial in the solution, and there's no wiggle room for teams with their doing discovery work and learning, or putting a feature out and finding it doesn't work very well, if there's no wiggle room in the solution to actually solve the problem, we're just going to keep on building features that don't work, that don't deliver the value. So we have to have the strategy is guardrails and guidance to help empower teams to do that innovation and solve problems. And without those guardrails, they're either on their own, or they're given, which is unfair and it's difficult for them to succeed, or they're given too narrow guardrails, and i.e. given the solution, and we fail there too. So it's a balancing act, and each business has got to find the middle ground, where the sweet spot where they can innovate and create value.
Exactly.
Should we move on?
Yeah, Emma's just saying this is so true. One of the key things I found with working with founders is falling in love with that solution.
Yeah,
thank you, Emma.
Thanks, Emma. So true. Good to see you, Emma.
So I get to ask this question.
You do.
What are the signs a company is falling into the product momentum gap?
Oh, you know what? You normally answer this, not me. But
I do. I can answer it.
I'll have a go, and then you can correct me. Well, there's a couple of key signs. If we were to look at product analytics, one obvious sign is monitoring the usage, the adoption of our features that we're releasing, and making sure we're doing that sort of review of the impact we're creating. And very frequently, when a company is in this place, they will release features, whether it's an enhancement to an existing one or a brand new thing, and the adoption is very low. It's 1 or 2 customers that use it, if that. The features they're releasing are rarely used, and often it'll be 1 customer, because it was built for 1 customer in reality, not for the market. So it's not a surprise. So that's a really good signal to see. The other signal which is more high level heuristical from the board perspective, is the growth that we once had seems to have stopped. And we don't seem to be getting the growth we were. Sales cycles might have started to get longer, or churn might have got worse. Both are a signal that if sales cycles are longer, our PMF is no longer as strong as it was. Important to think of PMF as product market fit as linear, not binary. Really important to not think of it as you have it or don't have it. It will change in strength. When you fall into the gap, it's normally because you started to broaden the sector. Your ICP has got larger. You might not even realize you're doing it. You might think you're still in the retail sector, but actually you've now started dealing with a different subsector inside retail. And that means the PMF is weaker there. And when PMF is weaker, sales cycles are slower because the purchase isn't so urgent, and the solution and the customer satisfaction isn't so strong, so churn starts to come in. So those 2 very laggy metrics, to be fair, but those 2 laggy metrics are the telltale indicators that I see regularly. How did I do, Andrea?
You did great. On the commercial side, what I would add is perhaps more negative feedback coming through, higher rate of support tickets coming through, your support team being very overwhelmed. It could even be things like higher bounce rates on your landing pages if people are not connecting to the message anymore. Perhaps you start seeing your ICP is not coming through anymore. So there's signs. There's multiple signs that you can look for across the board, both in product and in your commercial teams, for sure. There isn't going to be just one metric, but you'll see a variety of a mix and match. I was thinking it was like Chex Mix of bad things happening across the board, and that's a telltale sign.
Great. Let's have a look at the next one. And we're getting close to, this is the last question we have prepared, by the way. So I think it is. Let me just double check. Yes, it is. So hopefully you've got some questions for us in the audience. It'd be good during this last question to be adding some of them to the chat, if you can see the chat on YouTube, so that we can pick a few and answer them. That'd be really good. So please get them coming. So Andrea, what role does leadership play in preventing or overcoming the product momentum gap?
You usually answer this question. We seem to have flipped questions for fun today. I think for me, from where I sit as not as product leadership, but as product marketing and more from a commercial lens, it's usually the ability for the leader to say, first, to recognize that there is a problem and say, oh, things are not going right. And second, accepting that perhaps they are part of the problem. And that could mean they were not able to recognize the problem in time. They may have been part of like the hippo problem themselves, being like, we have to do this. There isn't one particular behavior, right? It could be different things, but having that ability, that vulnerability to say, we messed up, I messed up, I may be part of it. That is the most important thing, because if leadership is not there, then it doesn't matter who you bring in as a CPO. They're going to fail if that alignment does not happen. That alignment needs to happen, and the CEO, the founder, needs to be able to say, okay, there is a problem. I might be part of the problem. I need help solving the problem, and being open to receiving that help. And if that doesn't happen, then, like I said, it's just not going to go anywhere. And the second is, again, alignment, buzzword of the day. Once that acceptance happens, being able to align around how you solve that problem. And it could be, yes, alignment around the problem, whatever it might be, how you solve that problem, how you move forward, but making sure that everybody is on the same page around what's happening. Dave, what would you like?
Brilliantly answered, Andrea.
Thank you.
I like it. I think there's an important thing here, and it's possibly less about the gap and more about whether the leadership in general. I think, let's just think for a second the difference between leadership and management. I think of it in a very specific way. I think of it that management is where we spend a lot of time ensuring that our teams and staff don't surprise us. We want to manage progress, but we don't want shocks and surprises. We know what outcome we want. We probably understand how we're going to get it, and we're managing that. Leadership is a little different. True leadership is about actually creating the space for your staff and teams to surprise you. You're setting the direction, you're setting the challenge, you're providing the support, but you want to scale the people around you. You want those people to be empowered and to do things that you wouldn't have done yourself, but that are surprising in a positive way and going to have a huge impact on either your customers, the world, or your bottom line. And I think too often, if you think about how we've described this gap today, that gap means that the business is going through some struggle. And from a leader's perspective, from whichever C-suite role you pick, they won't be having fun. It won't be a great place right now. They'll be under pressure. And too frequently, when leadership fall under pressure, instead of doubling down on being the best leader they can be, they actually revert into either management or sometimes completely revert into individual contributor and try and fix the problem themselves. And the reality is they're not the best person in the business to fix the problem. Teams closer to the customer, teams closer to the technology are the best people to solve the problem. So the crucial thing for me is that leaders don't fall into the trap of trying to solve the problem personally. Instead, they solve the problem by being the best leader they can be and creating that space so that lots of people, their entire company, can solve this problem and get them to a better place.
Great. I know we have some questions. Graham, do you want to read the questions? Should I read the questions?
No, I can do it. I can do it.
Excellent.
So we'll go down from the top, and hopefully if people have more, they can add in as they go. So how can teams tell the difference between a short-term delivery slowdown and a true product momentum gap? And what's the earliest signal that leaders should act on?
I would say look at your leading metrics. So for product adoption, right, whatever leading metrics you have for your user behaviors. And the other would be look at support. Look at the feedback that you're getting. Look at the support tickets that you're getting. The sentiment of what's coming through. Are people saying, great, love this? Or are the rates of those tickets going up, and are people getting angrier and angrier? Support is your first line of defense. So you'll be able to know through there. I perhaps want to look at lagging metrics like sales cycles or churn, because they are lagging, right? It's going to take a few months before you get there. But work with your support team, work with your product marketing team, work with your marketing team to see, what feedback is coming through. Is there adoption? The things that you're releasing, that should be a, set of metrics that you can look at for sure.
Yeah, just to add there, and thanks, Johnny, for the question. Just want to double check in the phrasing in case there's a misunderstanding. You specifically said in the question, a short-term delivery slowdown. I just want to be clear, just in case there's a misunderstanding anywhere. The momentum gap isn't about the speed you deliver features. It's not about the speed you project manage stuff and delivery manage and ship. It's not about that slowing down. It's about the value you're creating slowing down. Obviously, the two can be very linked. I'm not suggesting that they're not. But the gap is, you could be shipping features every week and still be in the product momentum gap because they're the wrong features. They're features trying to support 6 ICPs by mistake, not one, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very much about, is what we're shipping targeting the underserved needs our market actually has? And do we really understand whose problem we're trying to solve and what their problem is? And as long as we can nail and answer those things brilliantly, you'll stay out of this place and be in a high growth business, assuming the rest of the business is functioning.
Great, thanks. I think it's interesting. I think often organizations do have those internal leading indicators that you touched on, Andrea. It's just more the willingness to admit that there may be some challenges, as well as the more commercial pieces. So thanks for that. So next question, how did your product momentum gap approach complement or differ from using the North Star framework when aligning strategy with day-to-day decisions and work?
Dave, would you like to take this one?
Yeah. How does it differ? Well, I think it complements it rather than differs. The North Star framework that I'm familiar with tries to pick like one thing that we particularly are trying to achieve across the whole business and drive everything towards that one thing. Like it might be, we've got to increase our number of active users. I have a client that's their key focus right now, is their platform growing, and they need more active users on their platform to demonstrate value to their investors. That's not a strategy. That's agreeing a target, an objective, a direction. The strategy is about how we're going to do that. So that's why it complements it perfectly. So if we have picked a North Star metric, let's say it's increase our active users. How? What is it we think we've got to do that? Presumably we think we've got to create value for the customer, and we're not into some hacky thing, where we can just show pictures of cats or something. But instead, if we're trying to grow our user base through actual value, then we have got to have the strategy of understanding what that value is, what the user behaviors are that will get us to that usage level that we're aiming for. So it fits together really well. The North Star framework will just give you more guidance around what the product strategy outcome is, but it's not going to answer what the product strategy is. That's what this piece of work is all about.
Great. Well, thank you. So next question. So if a product leader had just 90 days, not like any of us been given a deadline before, to restore momentum, which 3 actions would you prioritize, and what should they explicitly stop doing? I like that last bit, explicitly stop doing. Yeah.
Johnny, you're on fire today. These are great questions.
Yeah. I would say you need to do 2 things, not even 3, 2. I'm sure there's more, but I would say talk to your customers and listen to your customers. Because I've seen people talk to customers and then say, well, I know better anyway. I've seen that mistake happen. Or pick and choose, right? If there's a laundry list of, let's say, 5 things, there's 5 things that people are telling you, these are the issues that we're having with. And you say, well, I can do this one, but then I can also do another thing that they haven't mentioned, but because I like that other thing, right? Like I talked about earlier, falling in love with the problem versus the solution. That's still not listening to your customers. So listen, talk and listen. 2 very important things. And stop doing this is very difficult, and it's an ongoing thing that I struggle with as well, is having your own bias when you're solving that problem. And everybody's going to have bias, right? We all have different experiences, different backgrounds. The bias is going to be there, but you can try to remove as much of that as possible, again, by talking and listening to your customers, and really getting down to what the problem is, not what the solution, what you think the solution might be.
Nice, Andrea. I think I'll give a go with a slightly different tact, sort of try to make it really practical. First 3 things to do, really work with your peers in the C-suite to really agree and define what the ICP is, and really challenge an ideal customer profile or target market, whatever phrase you like, isn't companies that make more than £2 million and are in the UK.
That's not an ICP.
That is not an ICP. So challenge, do we really understand whose problem we're solving? And define that. Niche down is the key here. And don't be scared of really making that niche quite narrow. And use the data you have, because you have customers in that space, and you almost certainly haven't saturated the niche of where you're making loads of money and your happiest customers are. You've gone wide before whilst you still could have gone deeper. So niche down, really understand who it is, bring your peers together and people in the ICs in the business, and run the workshops, do the work to agree and clarify what the key behaviors are that map to that ICP solving the problem. And then thirdly, start using that decisions that you've had out of that whatever the key user behaviors are that you all agree you must start making that a crucial decision factor for every decision. Keep reminding your team about what they are. Keep bringing it top of mind again and again. What should you stop doing? I think this is super easy. A business that's in the product momentum gap is a not fun place. That it's painful. You know, growth hasn't been happening for quite a while. They might be profitable, but they're not reaching their goals. People aren't getting commission the way they wanted. You know, all these other things are happening. So it's very tempting as a leader, as a human being, to start people pleasing. But as a product leader, the second you start trying to be a people pleaser, you're going to just go deeper into the gap and make it bigger, because you'll keep saying yes to stuff that you should be saying no to. So stop people pleasing would be my what to stop doing. Great question. I love it, and beautifully worded. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you. Well, okay, we've got one final question. I think it's a bit of a tricky question. There's maybe a couple of things in here. So the first thing is it the product manager's job to kind of translate what your CEO believes the value is of what you're delivering, and then tell that? Or should that be more of a bottom up from people within here closer to the data and analytics?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure I understand how both parts relate to each other.
Maybe we just answer the first part, which is just more about the product manager's role around determining the value and then communicating the value.
Is the product manager's job to uncover that value, and not by yourselves. I mean, you have a team. You've got researchers, designers, product marketers, work with your team. You have CS, right? They're talking to their customers. Use everyone to try and start shaping that story. And obviously, as a product marketer, I'm going to say one of the key people or teams that's going to be able to help you with that is the product marketing team. They'll be able to help you articulate and position what that story looks like, especially internally to your commercial teams. I always tell my product managers, I'm your PR person, so I need to be your shadow day in, day out, why you're making decisions, how you're making decisions, because then that enables me, when the time comes, to be able to back them up and tell the story, right? Shape that story with them. So when difficult questions come up, I can back them up and go, oh, from the commercial lens, this is why it's important. And that just makes it easier, especially when really big changes happen. Just makes it easier to tell that story. And then that story can then be supported by your sales team, your marketing team, your CS team when they go out and speak to customers. And it's important for them to also articulate the value story behind the product, because what they're selling, as Dave said earlier, is you're not selling the feature, is you're selling the value behind what you're building.
Cool. Totally agree. I'm going to have a go at answering some of the second half of this question. Is there a gap in the traditional team structure for a data storyteller that are close to the data and the goals? And whilst I'm not convinced there's a particular job role that needs to be doing that doesn't already exist between PMM or between the product manager and others, I think what's key about this to understand, we tell stories for one reason only if we're in leadership or trying to influence other people, and that's because they're more memorable, they're typically more emotional, and they're more effective at helping people change their thinking and get on board with whatever it is you're trying to influence. Ironically, strong volumes of data in that story doesn't make it a better story. Human beings are very good at completely ignoring all the logical numbers and just focusing on the emotional piece. So whilst you definitely do need in teams somebody, whether it's outside the team in some sort of support or product ops or data analyst role, or whether it's in the team, or whether the PM's doing it, or whether somebody else in the team is doing it. You do need that data to be able to understand what you think is happening and the truth. But I wouldn't lead the story with the data. I wouldn't lead a story if I'm using a story to influence people and get them excited and to agree with the topic. I wouldn't use the data to drive it, because we are not logical. We think we are, we're not. The data needs to be in there somewhere, sure, because at some point the chimp part of our brain is going to decide that this thing is a good thing to do and want to justify it. And then we look for the data to justify the decision we've already made, which is to get on board with this thing. But it's not the data that will do that for you. So whilst we need it, and we need the data to get the understandings and to find the things we need to, the decisions we want to make or the stories we should be telling, the story is an emotional thing. Influencing people is about empathizing with their world, understanding your audience, understanding their perception, which is, you know, other people's perspectives, and telling the story that aligns with that to get to the outcome that you're trying to achieve. So I don't know if that helps, Chris, but hopefully it does.
That was great. I think you both carved up the question quite well and got a really good answer. So thank you very much for that. So with that, I'd like to thank both Andrea and Dave for taking the time out to talk about the product momentum gap. Available in all good bookshops. When I say bookshops, I mean online. If you'd like to go and have a look at it. And our next event will be in February, and we'll be looking to announce that next week. So listen, thank you again, Dave and Andrea. Really appreciate your time. And that's all for us.
Thank you so much. Thanks.